Rap. With the Martinez Report, and of course you can hear every game on Sports Talk 790 all the way through the Final Four in New Orleans. Well, Sports Rap Live will be live on Radio Row. But tonight we're going to look at some of the teams that have punched their tickets to the big dance, Andrew, and where the committee has selected them to play.
Let's get to it.
And let's jump right in. Now, you know what? We mentioned the bracket challenge on Sports 790, but we've also got to look at some of the teams that didn't make it. Let's just get it out of the way, okay? Because there's going to be a lot of crying. There's going to be a lot of spilled milk tomorrow morning if you're an alumni of some certain teams that got bumped.
There's also some teams that made it that probably shouldn't have.
Of course, and Andrew's going to tell us all about those right now, so let's get right into it.
Iona made it in, and I think a lot of people are going to talk about them as they were one of the last teams in, and why did they make it in? You look at their strength of schedule, it's 144th. That's very bad, but they also won the Metro. This is a team we've talked about during the season because of Scotty Machado, who I think he's one of the best point guards in the nation. He might be my #1 pick if I had to take someone as far as point guards go. Their RPI was 41, and KenPom, they were 57, so they're right there on the bubble. They won the Metro with a good record, so you kind of have to feel for them. They should be in. I thought they were going. I didn't think they were going to make it in. I thought that some of these other teams that were going to, that didn't make it were. The committee this year, for the first time ever, lists the actual teams 1 to 68 in order, so that you can tell where you actually fell out. So you're like, how did they actually view my, resume versus someone else's resume?
Was that something that they sprung on us this year? Or did you know that was going to happen going into it?
I knew that was going to happen about a couple days ago. They announced it was going to happen, which is surprising because they're trying to give more clarity so everyone knows how the process works, and so everyone can, because they can just get bombarded with, like, how did you screw this up? Why did you do that? And by showing the actual rank of teams, you can kind of figure out what they weigh, one team versus another. So they're first out.
You like this system?
I don't like the system, but I think it's getting better. I think they, at least if they know us, if they tell us how the sausage is made, we can at least figure out, what the ingredients each team should get there,
Gotcha.
The first team they have out is Oral Roberts. They won the regular season Summit League 17-1. You feel bad for them that, you go 17-1, but you lose your conference tournament. I mean, it's, they're just not in a very good league. Their RPI was 51. That's respectable. KenPom had them at 100. That's not very good. Their strength of schedule out of conference is 190. Not really much you can say for them. I didn't think they were even that close. The second team that was out was Miami. I didn't think they were going to get in. They were 9-7 in the ACC. That's just not good enough. The ACC was sort of down. I mean, you had a clear-cut 5, and then I really never thought Miami was going to make it in. Nevada, 13-1 in the WAC. The WAC isn't very bad. That's not a bad conference. So I don't really understand how they were the third team out. I might have had them a little bit closer. Their RPI was 66. Strength of schedule, though, it really comes back to the strength of schedule and your non-conference strength of schedule. If you know you're in a bad conference, you need to schedule up so you can make sure that you get yourself in.
More so now that they do rank the teams 1 through 68. So if you're sitting at 70, 80, 90, you're pretty much done.
Well, I mean, this next team is the exact reason why. Okay, you look at like Drexel.
Yep.
16-2 in the Colonial. I mean, they had an incredible season. They didn't win their conference championship, and strength of schedule. That's what it is. It's the non-conference strength of schedule. If you're gonna play a conference that's not very good, do something in the non-conference. Schedule up. Try and get yourself in an advantageous position. Or at least go to your conference commissioner and say, hey, you know what? The rest of the teams in our conference are bad. We think that we're going to be really good this year with the team we have. Please make sure that everyone schedules up, so that whenever you play another team, that doesn't bring your RPI down because you played, just whoever's next on your schedule in conference. The last couple teams were Mississippi State. I thought they were going to be pretty much borderline. Stansbury, I don't know where he's going to stand with that Mississippi State job. I probably would have fired him a couple of seasons ago because of what they've dealt with adversity. But, I mean, that's just me. Seton Hall had a really good start to this season, but they just kind of faded out in the second half. I feel bad for them. They had a really good season, 8-10 in the Big East. The Big East isn't what it used to be, though. In Washington wasn't even in their first 6 that made it out. So that should tell you where they are. They literally did nothing. They did nothing in the non-conference. They didn't play. All the games they played, like they played Duke to a pretty fair score in New York, but they didn't win those games. Right. You have to win games. It's not good enough to schedule up and hey, look, we played some decent teams, and they won the regular season Pac-12. I knew this is the first season ever that a BCS conference has had a regular season champion not make the tournament. So I mean, it should tell you right there that the Pac-12 was not viewed as a BCS conference this year, even though it wasn't viewed as a Power 6 conference. They were, I think, 9th best by most by RPI, and I think even by Ken Pom
I heard an interview with Tommy Amaker the other day, and he was saying that Harvard was ranked, or I'm sorry, the Ivy League was ranked higher than the Pac-12 this year.
It might be.
Right there with them.
Yeah, it's that bad though as far as like the conferences. So I think the Pac-12 got treated fairly. They had a chance at one point for 3, but whenever you had Washington basically get bounced out the first round, everyone knew it was over for them.
Okay, so there's some teams on there that I thought that maybe you would have on that list that aren't. So that means they must have made the big dance.
Maybe.
Okay, well, let's start right here in the South. You know, we're in the dirty right here in H-Town in Houston, Texas. So why don't we start in the South in the Atlanta region? And,
well, this is the Catlanta region because look at the #1 team overall. It's Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats. They're going to play in the winner of the Mississippi Valley State versus Western Kentucky. And that Western Kentucky-Mississippi Valley State game, that's going to be one of the first 4 games at Dayton.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's explain a little bit to people who are just getting into brackets or just, starting to get into college basketball. They've added 4 teams. We grew up with 64 teams.
Well, I remember when even there was before that, but yeah.
Okay, right. But, for the last, 10 years, 12
it's
20
been that
years.
used to be the mode was the 64.
Right.
And that used to be a nice shiny number because you knew there was 16 in each different region. But now they've added these extra 4 teams, sort of to try and help out, I guess, them in majors. I don't know who really ends up helping out more or hurts more. But it's these extra games. You're going to have 2 of them, which have 16 seeds in there. One of them which has a 13 seeds, and then one of them has 14 seeds. So, and it's not dispersed properly, one in each one of them. It's kind of all over the place, and some of them have 2, some of them have none. But that's how it works. Is the first 4 games you watch. The 16 seed ones, I don't even watch them. I don't even care because those teams are going to get slaughtered by #1 seed. But the 13, 14 seeds, that's the game last year that gave us VCU. I thought that USC last year, who made it in, could have had a decent run, but they didn't. So I mean, their game's worth watching.
All right, so in this Mississippi Valley State, Western Kentucky, who do you think actually is going to end up facing Kentucky?
Well, Western Kentucky is favored by 5 points. I was just looking at the Vegas lines earlier. I don't really know. I haven't watched either of these teams that much. I don't think anyone has. I don't think it's really going to matter because Kentucky's probably just going to destroy them.
Now, before we move on, Kentucky, they lost to Vanderbilt.
They did. They lost today. That was the 3rd game they played against Vanderbilt. The first 2 times, I watched both those games, and they were extremely, extremely close. I think Vanderbilt has come the closest to any team I've seen this season to being able to match them game for game. I mean, they didn't win the first 2, but they looked very, very game. I think a lot of people are going to be picking that Vanderbilt team to go far because of what they accomplished today. But I also don't buy into the thing of like, oh, you need a loss to going in. Like Kentucky, if they had won that game, they potentially could have had the longest win streak since I think it was the last undefeated Indiana team that won undefeated the whole season. I think it was like a 76 or something like that.
After losing to Indiana, ironically, earlier in the season, yeah.
So I don't think that whole thing of like you need a loss going into the tournament, I think that's hogwash. I think that Calipari is going to use it to his advantage, but I don't think that's, I don't know. They stayed the #1 seed, so I mean that should overall. So that should tell you, what the committee thought of that loss today. So,
all
I'm
right,
not that worried. But this next round game, Adam, they could potentially be playing in the next round. UConn gets Iowa State. I'm not giving Iowa State their favored by 1.5 points, but I'm not really giving Iowa State that much of a chance. Mostly because that's kind of a rag and tag team of guys, of transfers and whatnot that they have, aka the mayor that runs that team for Iowa State. UConn, though, is going to get a lot of people are going to be talking and tripping. I'm guaranteed whatever that line is between them and Kentucky, it's going to get bet heavy on the UConn side because everyone still remembers what happened last year with Kemba.
Here they are again.
It's not the same team, though, from Kemba last year. It's not. This team has been wishy-washy. They don't use their size appropriately. Andre Drummond, like he's a tall guy, and so is Oriaki, but they're not aggressive enough. Gons, you watched a little bit of this UConn team. Did they even seem remotely aggressive to you at all?
No, not at all. Like when I watched that one game that they were playing, they almost seemed like scared to try to get to box out, rebound, kind of throw an elbow in there, just kind of have more of an aggressive type of play to them.
Yeah.
They're like, they play really reserved. So I don't think
Calhoun's going to save anything.
No.
Like it's nice that he has them there, but it's clear they don't have an on-the-floor leader or someone that's going to galvanize the team or a junkyard dog that's going to say, I'm not letting this team lose, not today. They don't have any of those guys at all.
And that was Kemba.
It was Kemba. He would take the last. It's not a matter of someone taking the shot. It's someone saying, I'm the leader, and they don't have that guy at all. I'm not really worried about Kentucky in that matchup for them. I think Kentucky will roll through that. I think Kentucky's a much better team and will just beat them up inside. They'll just rebound the heck out of the ball. But that's a game that people are going to say is tough.
Now, this is a game that I'm getting excited about. You know, I'm really looking at the bracket for the first time, so I need you to talk about some of these matchups. But Wichita State versus VCU, you have this year's surprise team that can make a run versus last year's surprise team that did make a run.
I think it's going to be a very interesting game. That one, it's, you know, the 5-12s, everyone loves to pick the 12 over the 5 because everyone knows it happens every year. This could very well be that situation where VCU, you know, wins that Wichita State. And if you remember from last year, that VCU team make a lot of threes and play a lot of that zone press after made shots. So they're going to get right in your grill and try and, you know, create a lot of havoc. I think it's going to be a really fun game. I don't know who I would take. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up picking in VCU in that game just because I think it's going to be a really competitive game. Probably a lot closer than maybe even the 5.5 says.
How long do you actually look at your bracket before you actually start making picks? Will you look at it all night tonight?
No, I'll probably pencil in a bunch of teams. Like I'll pencil in Kentucky and then here and here. You know, for a couple rounds. It's the 8-9s, the 4-5. You know, it's those one nitty-gritty ones where I'm going to start really looking at, like, because it's all styles make matchups. That's all it is. That's you. Just because one team has a better record or one team is the higher seed, that does not matter at all. Vegas will tell you that through the numbers. You know, oh, this team is a 4 versus a 13. The line's 1.5. Why? Because these teams don't match. You know, the matchup doesn't suit the 4 seed well. You know, so it's a lot of that. It's going in there and looking and seeing. You know, what have these teams done? Are they hot? You know, did they come in struggling? You know, who are these teams? What have they done lately?
Who's putting the money up to fly Kadoma out there and start putting some money on these games? Because he's been riding a hot streak lately. We need to get you back out there to Vegas.
Hey, man, I heard they got Harrah's in New Orleans.
That's right. Oh, we'll be out there. We'll be out there all weekend, man. Cannot wait for that.
I'm already looking into it, man. I got my antennas on doing my research.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, let's keep it moving. Indiana, they end up with a 4 seed.
Yeah, I think that Indiana team, they're kind of limping into the tournament. They have a lot of good wins. When you look at the resume, we even talked about them last week. They have the last show. They beat Kentucky. They beat Michigan State. They beat Ohio State. But a majority of those good wins, the damage they did was in the non-conference. I'm not so sure how I see them faring this year. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about that Indiana team particularly. And the other thing is that they won all those games, Adam, at home. I'm not so sure that I feel pretty good about this team on the road. So it's to be determined, I guess. They lost in the Big Ten tournament. They beat Penn State and they lost to Wisconsin. So it's not like they're coming in with this great, you know, momentum. So I'm not very high on them. I probably won't. Even if they do win that game, I'm gonna pick whichever the VCU Wichita State game to beat them. The next game after that, we have UNLV versus Colorado. Colorado was one of those bit thieves that kind of jumped up and won the Pac-12. I told you there was going to be one team that was going to jump up and do something in the Pac-12 tournament. I didn't know who, but someone would.
First year in the Pac-12 for Colorado. What do? They go out and win the tournament.
Isn't that funny that a Big 12 team is winning the Pac-12 team, you know? We can go round and round about that, though.
Well, you also have a future. We'll get into it in a little bit, but we also have a future SEC team win the Big 12.
You also have an old Conference USA team who won the Big East. I mean, we can do this all day.
Keep up. I know.
We can do this all day.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah, I think that Colorado versus UNLV, I'm going to take UNLV in that game. They're a 3-point favorite.
Shout out to Jay Webb.
I'm probably going to have them a bigger favorite than that. I like that UNLV team.
Yeah, we need to get Jay Webb to call in tonight.
The other game that they'll be playing the winner of the Baylor South Dakota State game. And you know who I've been touting on that South Dakota State team for a couple weeks now? Nate Walters. I'm telling you, this kid, I'm going to be excited to watch him. I think this Baylor team, though, they're starting to get good right now because they just won that big game over Kansas and they got that big win. But this Baylor team doesn't have a lot of want. They don't have a lot of heart. I don't like this team at all. They're super, super athletic. If you were going to have a track and field meet, I would have Baylor would be my #1 pick. Those guys, they can jump out through the gym, but they just don't have that intangible it. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, they do have pretty sick uniforms, though.
Those things are terrible. Terrible. They look like highlighters.
I like the yellow ones. Hey, thumbs up for the Baylor uniforms.
Those are ugly.
Anybody here? Thumbs up? Baylor?
I gotta give a thumbs up to them, but it kind of mimics the Oregon uniform.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know what I mean?
It does.
Baylor's uniforms are Adidas.
That's true. Yeah, they're wearing the Adi lights.
You know, so I would be more for it if it was a little bit more original, but I am feeling it a little bit.
The other thing about this regional matchup, Adam, is that UNLV is the 6th though. but look where that's at. It's in Albuquerque, okay? Right. So Baylor being the 3 seed out there really doesn't matter. You realize in these brackets when you start to break them down that it doesn't necessarily matter so much what your seed is, but where you're playing. So UNLV, that's a normal game for them. That's a Mountain West game for them.
Right.
Colorado, that's a normal time zone game for them. Baylor, though, that's sort of out of their element. So I could totally see Baylor losing to UNLV in the second round of that.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, let's wrap up in Greensboro for the South bracket.
UNLV, we just talked about them. Notre Dame versus Xavier. Xavier, they got kind of hot late. They lost to St. Bonaventure today in the A10 tournament. I still think Xavier's a very good team. They're going to play probably the matchup, the winner of the Duke-Lehigh game. Duke, they're going to win that game. But the Notre Dame game, it's going to be interesting if we get to see Duke versus Notre Dame because Notre Dame has one of those defenses. They like to slow everything down. They like to slow the game down. And Duke's one of those teams they like to get a lot of threes and get it going.
Little man just came cleaned up at the swag table. I mean, he can't even carry it all. Look at him.
That is so true. Hey, did you get Rockets tickets? We want you to,
of course I did.
Come back over here real quick, before we finish up with Duke.
Shout out to Conrad and Sarah holding it down over here at the Sports Talk 790 swag table.
Absolutely. What's your name, little man?
Joseph.
Hey, Joseph. Are you a Rockets fan?
Yeah.
What's your favorite sport?
Football.
Do you play football?
I'm gonna play football.
You're going to play football? All right. What position do you want to play?
Running back.
Running back. All right, man.
What's
hey,
your
I'll
favorite?
Tell you what. When you make the NFL, you come back and be on our show, okay?
Okay.
Buddy, enjoy the Rockets game.
All right.
Tell everybody you listen to Sports
Give
Rap
it up
Live.
for Joseph.
That's right. That's right. All right, man. The kids. It's all about the kids. Wu-Tang is for the children. All right, so Duke versus Lehigh. Lehigh got hot to get in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Two Holloway, though, for Xavier, because this team has been broken pretty much since that Cincinnati game. But they still have so much talent. I could see them beating Duke. I really could. I could also see Notre Dame beating Duke. This Duke team, I'm not very high on them. They really are better. They're not as good as their resume says they are. You look at the losses they have on the season. They don't have a lot of them, but you also look at, I don't know, they're just not impressive to me. When you watch them offensively, Austin Rivers is the only kid that can get a shot. Everyone else is pretty much a three-point shooter or someone that has to have the ball distributed to them. They don't have a point guard either. And this is probably the worst defensive Duke team in the last decade, or maybe even since Krzyzewski's been there.
And it's so funny.
It's a bad Duke team as far as defensively.
It's so funny because they have the Plumlee brothers who are, they're big dudes. You would think they would have some meat there.
Yeah,
in the
but
middle.
they don't really like bow out and try and get guys on the boards. I don't know. I don't think that sets up very well for Duke at all. So I would probably be. I'm hesitant, but I think I'm going to try and take Xavier in there because I think Xavier's one of those teams that they get hot. Look out, because they can make a serious run.
Who's old buddy that caught the shiner in the fight? Big white dude that plays for Xavier. What's his name?
Oh, I don't remember. Freeze.
Freeze.
Yeah, Kenny Freeze.
He
Yeah.
looks like Dr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze from Batman, for sure.
And so I think out of all this, Adam, you want to go ahead and break down for the next, what do we think this is going to head to, or what do you want to do?
For this bracket?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't Arnold play Mr. Freeze at one point?
He did.
I think
sure
so.
did.
I heard we got a new show called The Arnold Factor on Sports Talk
We
790
do. Danny
on
Arnold.
Saturdays.
Danny Arnold. Of course, he used to be with us at the other station. And, everybody seems to kind of follow the pack, the Rapp pack.
Wow.
The one-liner I remember from that movie was like, "Time to chill, time to chill."
Yeah, we need a hotkey.
I'm gonna get it.
It is time to chill.
It is.
And if you're chilling a little bit too hard, okay, Andrew, before we break down the bracket, if you're having a good time out here tonight and you don't think you can drive home, make sure you designate a driver, okay, a non-drinking designated driver, or take a cab or a limo, because both cost a lot less than calling Gary Trichter. Now, Gary Trichter is the cowboy lawyer. You hear him on all the radio stations around town, but you're also taking the risk of getting yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't have his number in your phone. If you do get pulled over and you have been drinking, be polite to the officers. Ask for your lawyer before doing any tests or answering any questions, and continue being polite or asking for your lawyer even if the officer says you can't have one. And remember, it's going to be really, really expensive if you do get that DWI. You're looking at 1 year suspension of your driver's license, $2,000 fine, $3,000 minimum surcharge on your license. Yeah, exactly. A
Well,
doubling.
I
or-
tell you what, go ahead and give me that number so I can plug it into my phone here.
I want to get back into the March Madness, but I want to make sure everybody has that number. And if you want to know more about all the DWI laws here in Texas, you can go to texasdwilaw.com. But this is the number you got to have: 713-524-1010. That's 713-524-1010. That's Gary Trichter. Make sure you plug that into your phone, the Cowboy Lawyer. All right, well, let's get back into it, Andrew. Now we broke down the Atlanta regional, I guess you could call it, the Atlanta side of the bracket. This is going to be, the old faithful, the blue. You've got Big Blue Kentucky, you got the blue Duke, you got blue Xavier. Who do you see coming out of here?
It's got to be Kentucky. I really don't see how they're not going to come out of this. They're, I think, easily better than every team in this bracket. Obviously, matchups make, the games, but I don't think UConn can keep up with them. I don't think any of the Wichita State, VCU, Indiana teams. Now, Indiana has already played them, and Indiana beat them. I guarantee that if Indiana plays them again, Kentucky is just going to throttle them. Because don't you think that a team that you've already lost to your first loss, you're going to come right back and try and kick the hell out of them?
Yeah.
So I think if
Nature of the beast.
So if they face Indiana, I think that's going to be a huge Kentucky win. I don't think they're going to end up facing Duke. I know that it's still 20 years on the anniversary of the last time they played and the Christian Laettner turnaround shot and all that. I'm going to have probably either Xavier or UNLV playing Kentucky. So I think it's not an easy bracket for Kentucky, but I think some of these teams are going to weed themselves out to where Kentucky doesn't have to sweat too much.
There you go. Now we're gonna have to, give it a couple days for us to look over the brackets. I know you've been on top of it all day.
Yeah,
you've been on top
Andrew.
of it all
Time
season.
to chill.
We do need that hotkey. That's coming next. But let's move on. Let's go to the west side, which some say is the best side, but we all know the south is where it's at. So let's move over there. Now Phoenix is where this regional will be held. But the path starts in Columbus, and that's with a #1 seed who I think proved themselves today to get that #1 seed.
I personally think this is the toughest regional of all of them.
Awesome.
I mean, just look who's in this region. Michigan State, all right. Second round, they could be playing Memphis. Memphis just won Conference USA tournament. That Memphis team started off slow, but they've gotten really, really hot. You also have in this region, St. Louis is not bad. That's a very good team. I think they're like on Ken Palm. I think St. Louis is like maybe 10th overall or something like that.
And that would be the Billikens.
Yeah, the Billikens. So I would be very scared to play them if you had into in the second round. Let's see where he has them. 15th. In the second round, you'd be paying a team that's 15th according to Ken Palm. That's very challenging.
That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing for St. Louis to be that team because nobody really talked about them being ranked that high.
New Mexico, I think they're a very good team. I think they're feisty. I think Louisville, who just won the Big East tournament, I think they're very feisty as well. Murray State, we've talked about them all season. They have one loss to their name. Marquette, I think, is maybe the most underrated team in the nation. Then you also have Florida, who is, they're okay. I mean, they'll get you in a track meet, but they're not a very consistent team. But then you have Missouri, who arguably could have been a #1 seed. I think this is easily the toughest region. So,
well, okay, so I'm looking at Omaha right here. You might have a Florida team that almost knocked off Kentucky, matching up with Missouri. What do you think about that matchup?
I think it's going to be a track meet because Missouri is. Here's the thing. I think Missouri can easily. I think not easily, but I think they have it set up for them to where they can win this region because look at the teams they play: Murray State, Colorado State, Marquette. Any of those other teams, they're not very big as far as the physical size. Missouri wins a lot of their games because they play that 4 guard with the 1 power forward, and they like to get up and down the court and sort of run you to that. Florida will do it right there with you. Florida will run with you all day long. If you saw that game against Kentucky the other day, they kept up just fine. They would won the game in the hundreds. So that's going to be interesting. I think they're still going to beat them because Florida's not very consistent. But I cannot wait to see. I hope we get Missouri versus Marquette.
I was just going to say that because that is 2 teams that are almost identical to each other in the way they get up and down the court, their athleticism, the way they play.
Missouri, though, doesn't have the defense, I think, to as good as Marquette. But I think Missouri has the much better offense out of all those teams. I think Murray State, it's going to be interesting to see them play Marquette in the second round because they're both very physical teams that like to, hard-nosed, good work ethic teams. But I think this is set up for Missouri to take that part of the lower half of the region. The top half, where we were talking about Michigan State, Memphis, that's going to be an incredibly tough game.
Memphis, St. Louis.
That's going to be an interesting game, but I think whoever wins that, I think if Memphis wins that game, Michigan State is in for a hell of a game. I think it would be interesting, though, if we do get to see Michigan State versus Missouri, like the 1 versus 2, only because what does Missouri not do very well? Hit the boards. That's the games they lost this season were to teams like Kansas State, but that's all they do is rebound very well. Michigan State, one of the best rebounding teams in the nation, so that could be a really big matchup problem for them. It's going to be interesting, though, to see which one of those teams comes out of there. I think Davidson and Long Beach State, I don't know that I'd be picking them for my upsets. Long Beach State, maybe. They have Casper Ware, but I think that New Mexico and Louisville teams are too hot right now. So.
What about this Louisville team? They just come off of the Big East tournament win.
Well, they're finally healthy. They waited so long to get, like it was Blackshear to get healthy, and they've had so many other injuries. They're finally able to play they want to play, which is with the zone defense and the kind of get up and down the court style. I'm not sure if you saw Peyton Siva last night in that Big East tournament.
Yeah,
that kid was having a pretty good game.
Well, they've been expecting that from him all year long, and to finally see it. And that's when these guys do it. It's in the brightest lights in Madison Square Garden.
And they've done it before, so I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised to see Louisville get past Michigan State, but only because they're undersized. But
now I didn't watch, from tip to championship for the Big East tournament. But what is the over/under on the number of times that Jay Billis referred to Jeezy?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I heard him at least 4 times make a Jeezy reference.
That game of Louisville versus Cincinnati in the championship was one of the worst Big East championship games I've ever seen in my life. It might be the worst.
So anticlimactic.
It was like 14-20 and a half. It was bad.
So bad. It was bad. All right, well, let's take a quick break, Andrew. We're already halfway through.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. We're going to get into some more detail on the whole bracket itself, but this is Selection Sunday. We are Sports Rap Live. We're on Sports Talk 790. Shout out to Act Bad. And, of course, Amp Houston. If you guys want to see the best podcast on radio, yeah, I said podcast on radio, go to amphouston.net or go to sportsraplive.com and see all of our videos. You can see the brand new Sneak of the Week video with our boy Kadoma. When we come back, Kadoma, we'll take a little reprieve and we'll talk about some of the sneakers we have that you might see on court right here in the Final Four, or the chase for the Final Four in March Madness.
Can't wait.
All right, so let's take a few minutes. Let's catch our breath. We are off and running. I see the Rapp Pack walking in the building. Yep. So happy birthday to Al the Barber and, of course, Martin from AMP. We're partying out here tonight, and we want you guys to, too. Soccer Talk Louise, I see you, baby. All right, guys, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back here on Sports Rap Live.
Sports Rap Live.